I want to pause for a moment to consider this list of factors for adequate provocation. What does it convey in terms of the kinds of circumstances that inflame passion? When I look at the list, I see emotions of jealousy or humiliation that control. Humiliation at being beaten up, jealousy at seeing your spouse in bed with somebody else. And for example, in a modern time, some actually question whether adultery deserves to be considered adequate provocation, given that divorce is so common. Or is the emotion of jealousy and betrayal so hardwired into us that it should still be on the list of what is traditionally viewed as adequate provocation? What constitutes adequate provocation in the eyes of a traditional court like Girard is a very fixed list of categories. It's what moved the average person to kill at common law. It's what the British male landowner would get enraged by. And if you look at some of these items, they do relate to humiliation and jealousy. That's the fixed list from common law. That's the list that the Girard court has embraced. Certainly universal emotions, but by no means the only ones. It's fascinating to me that in the modern era, these are the emotions that states still cling to. Under the traditional view, it's interesting to look at what doesn't account for adequate provocation. What's not on the list of factors? The first thing that comes to my mind is a mercy killing. Killing a loved one who's terminally ill, in a lot of pain. Maybe an elderly parent. That elderly parent wants to die. That homicide can't be mitigated to manslaughter under this view because it's not on this fixed list. Let's suppose our defendant kills a verbally abusive person, employer, husband, parent. That's not on this list either. And many would argue that this limited list has got to be broadened to include complex emotions that don't neatly fit into the traditional view of adequate provocation. That it should be expanded to reflect some other issues, more modern issues. There are some of the complexities that be picked up by modern courts, and we will see in that case that modern courts are going to expand this list. But not here, not in Girard. This court rebuffs completely the idea of expanding the list of what constitutes adequate provocation. It's adopted the traditional view, borrowed from the common law, and it adheres to that position, that adequate provocation is limited to the ones that are clearly followed through our history. One of those members of the list, if it's one of those factors, great, and if it's not, you cannot begin to meet element number 3. So I want to ask, why would a modern court cling to old traditional reasons? Reasons that the British landowner felt compelled adequate provocation. What are they afraid of if they open up the categories of provocation? This court is very concerned about the need to have limits. They don't want to include just anything that might move people to kill. Mitigation, this court finds, can't be the result of the peculiar frailties of this particular defendant. It's got to be the result of universally felt emotions that would cause someone to lose their reason and kill. So the court says, yep, complaining to JAG to have Steve court-martialed, that's devastating, we get it. But the court says this is not one of those traditional kinds of adequate provocation. Check your list, it's not on there. And for certain, the court says, adequate provocation should never include insulting words, the kind of words that Joyce threw up at Steve. Look at the policy statement issued by the court. Did you spot it? The court says a verbal domestic dispute can't be the grounds for mitigating murder to manslaughter. Social necessities dictate this result. The court is holding firm. So under a traditional view, like the one espoused in Girard, if the defendant can't prove one of the traditional categories to meet adequate provocation, defendant can't receive a voluntary manslaughter instruction, a jury verdict can't come out to support the charge. Here the court says Steve's out of luck. His killing won't be mitigated to manslaughter just because he became enraged by reasons that would not move an average person to kill.